On the evening of May 4, 2026, Houston police walked through the front door of a $1.2 million home in one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in America and found 4 bodies. A woman, 39 years old, pregnant, 2 children, 8 years old, 4 years old, both found in their beds, and a man, 52 years old, who, according to investigators, had put them there. That same evening, across the city of Houston, a group of friends sat at a dinner table waiting for that man to show up. He had plans. A normal, ordinary Monday evening dinner with people who genuinely cared about him. He never arrived. No one at that table knew why. Not yet. And here's what makes this case one of the most disturbing, most confounding, most quietly devastating stories to come out of Houston in years. This was not a man who existed on the margins. This was not a man anyone had flagged, reported, or feared. This was a man his closest colleague called a great friend right up until the end. A man whose wife had posted a laughing video with him just 10 days before. A man who had dinner plans on the same night that Houston police were standing inside his home. 0 prior police calls to that address. 0 legal filings of any kind. 0 documented warning signs. And 4 people dead on a Monday evening. So the question this video is going to spend the next hour answering, or more honestly, attempting to answer, is the one that the Houston restaurant community, the people who ate at their restaurants every week, and the people who showed up to a candlelit vigil 1 week later, are all still asking, why? If you are new here, welcome to Crime Scene Archives. This channel exists to take cases like this one seriously. The people, the facts, the unanswered questions, all of it. If that matters to you, subscribe now and stay with me, because this story demands your full attention from the very beginning. Let's start where it deserves to start. Not with the crime scene, not with the investigation, with the woman at the center of it. Thy Mitchell was 39 years old when she died. And I want to tell you something before I go any further, because it matters. I have covered a significant number of cases on this channel. A significant number. And very rarely do I sit down to research a victim and find someone who, by every single account from every single person who knew her, was exactly who she appeared to be. No gap between the public persona and the private person. No performance. No curated version of herself for external consumption. Just her, completely and consistently herself, in every room she ever walked into. Thy Mitchell was born in Chicago, but Houston shaped everything about who she became. She grew up as a first-generation Vietnamese American, the daughter of parents who had built something out of almost nothing. Her father, a Vietnamese immigrant, worked at NASA. Let that sit for a moment. A Vietnamese immigrant, in the era he arrived, working at one of the most technologically advanced institutions in the world. That is the household Thy Mitchell came from. That is the standard she inherited without ever being told. It was extraordinary. Her mother and grandmother ran a small Vietnamese restaurant in Houston, and from the time she was a little girl, Thy spent her weekends in that restaurant. Not as a customer, working, learning, watching her mother and grandmother put food in front of strangers and make them feel like family. Learning what hospitality actually is, not from a textbook, not from a business school curriculum, but from the most direct and honest teacher available. Lived experience. That lesson never left her. She earned her undergraduate degree from the University of Houston, and here is something worth paying attention to. She did this while working in the restaurant industry simultaneously. She was not a student figuring out what she wanted to do after graduation. She was already doing it. She was already building towards something while she was still in the classroom. She went on to earn her master's degree in human resources and employment relations from Penn State University. She held HR leadership roles at 3 Fortune 500 companies in the hospitality and retail industries. She served as a board member of the Texas Restaurant Association's Greater Houston chapter. She was selected, not appointed, selected by her peers as Greater Houston Restaurateur of the Year for 2025. In 2023, she launched a women's fashion brand called Foreign Fair. Travel, inspired clothing, wrinkle-resistant, easy to pack, stylish, but practical. Exactly the kind of brand built by a woman who was always somewhere, always moving, always looking forward to the next thing. And 2 months before she died, in February 2026, Thy appeared on Houston Matters, a local radio program, to discuss the financial challenges facing the restaurant industry. She sat in front of that microphone and said, with full composure and genuine forward momentum, something that I think tells you everything about who she was. She said, "We see our restaurants as an experience. We want someone to feel like they are getting away when they are leaving their home versus a utility meal." 2 months before she died, on local radio, talking about the future, planning, building, looking forward. That is who Thy Mitchell was. But the resume only tells you what she accomplished. The people who actually knew her tell you who she was. Her friend Angelique Gildas, who styled the Foreign Fare brand alongside her, said at the vigil held 1 week after the family was found, she had this incredible way of elevating everyone around her, without being pushy in any way. You just found yourself doing your best. Her friend Allie Jarrett said simply, she was always thinking about other people. There are just no words. Ty Adams, who knew her through the Houston hospitality community, said she was always ready to help, always giving, without condition or expectation. Eric Sandler, city editor for Culture Map Houston, said she was never happier than when she was helping other people celebrate. That Traveler's Table and Traveler's Cart had become venues for birthday celebrations and big gatherings of friends, and that the opportunity to provide a space for those moments meant everything to her. He said she loved her staff, supported them, encouraged them to advance in the industry, promoted them through the ranks, and found genuine meaning in the fact that she could be a vehicle for other people's success. Houston chef Nikki Tran told the Houston Chronicle that Thy had once offered her a completely open slate to run a multi-day pop-up at Traveler's Cart. No restrictions, no interference, full creative control. That is the kind of generosity. That is not a marketing strategy. That is a character trait. And there is one detail that Tran shared at the vigil that I keep returning to. Thy had once mentioned missing a dish Tran used to cook, a broken rice dish called the Saigon Sunrise. Something specific, something personal, something that carried a flavor of memory. Tran was looking forward to making it for her again. She never got the chance. The Houston Chronicle described Thy Mitchell as a driven and logical business owner, a connector, a little ball of energy, an extrovert who did not know a stranger, a fashionista, a restaurateur who was always generous with her time and who loved to promote other people's restaurants on her own social media, without being asked, without expecting anything in return. She organized gift card swaps among women business owners so they could share them with their employees over the holidays. She did cartwheels, actual cartwheels, in the street outside Traveler's Cart when construction finally ended. That is who Thy Mitchell was. And now I want to tell you about the weight she was quietly carrying in the final weeks of her life, because it has not received nearly enough attention in the coverage of this case. In February 2026, just 2 months before May 4th, Thy's sister Liam lost her husband suddenly. Doctors believed he suffered a ruptured brain aneurysm. In an instant, Thy's sister went from wife to widow. Think about what that means in real terms. Thy Mitchell, pregnant with her 3rd child, running 2 restaurants, managing a fashion line, serving on a board, was also quietly holding her grieving sister together through one of the most devastating losses a person can experience. She was doing this while planning to attend Liam's upcoming wedding in Boston, the same wedding that brought Thy and her daughter Maya to a dress shop on the very last Sunday of Thy's life. On May 3rd, 2026, the Sunday before the family was found, Thy and 8-year-old Maya spent the afternoon dress shopping. Liam was planning to remarry, and they were there to find something for Maya to wear. Maya tried on a soft, formal dress in a room full of mirrors. Maya made sure her mom found something she loved too. Thy posted about it on Instagram that day. She wrote, "Maya picked her dress and made sure I was set too. The sweetest mom-daughter time." That evening, multiple friends called Thy. She sounded completely normal, present, engaged, talking, planning, being entirely herself, a pregnant woman, holding her grieving sister together, shopping with her daughter for a wedding dress, posting on Instagram. talking to friends on the phone. That was Thy Mitchell on the last Sunday of her life. Now, I want to talk about Mathew Mitchell, and before I do, I want to say something clearly. I am going to give Mathew the same care, the same depth, and the same honest attention that I gave to Thy. Not because what investigators say he did deserves any defense, but because understanding who he was fully, completely, without shortcuts, is the only honest framework for examining why investigators say he did it. Anything less than that is not journalism. It is just noise. Mathew Mitchell was 52 years old, and his background, in the most literal sense, does not read like a real person's biography. It reads like something someone invented to make a point about what a life can contain. He completed his undergraduate degree at Emory University. Then he studied abroad, in France and Italy, and at Oxford University in England. Oxford, one of the oldest, most academically prestigious institutions in the world. Mathew Mitchell sat in those lecture halls, in that city, in that tradition. After Oxford, he did not return home and start a career. He moved through the world first. He worked as a journalist and writer in London, in Paris, in New York City, 3 of the most culturally significant cities on the planet. He lived in them. He worked in them. He wrote in them. When he finally returned to Texas, he enrolled at Rice University's Jesse H. Jones School of Business, one of the most respected business schools in the country, and entered the pharmaceutical industry. His father, Dr. Jerry Mitchell, was a professor at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. Mathew joined the family business Texas Center for Drug Development, Incorporated, a clinical research company based in Texas. He served as vice president under his father before stepping into the role of president and CEO himself. 14 years. That is how long Mathew Mitchell spent in that world. A world defined by structure, by institutional rigor, by data-driven decision-making, by controlled processes and measurable outcomes. A world where nothing happened without documentation, where every step was tracked, where the environment itself imposed order. And then he walked away from all of it. He enrolled at the Art Institute of Houston and earned an associate's degree in culinary arts. He worked in Houston restaurants, on the floor, in the kitchen, learning what it means to run a hospitality operation from the inside. And then, in 2019, he and Thy opened Traveler's Table together. He named every single cocktail on the menu himself. Now, I want to pause on that career pivot for a moment, because I think it carries more weight than the coverage of this case has acknowledged, and I will come back to it in significant detail when we get to the theory section. For now, hold on to this. A man who spent 14 years in one of the most controlled, structured, institutionally regulated professional environments that exists chose to walk directly into one of the most chaotic, emotionally demanding, financially volatile industries in the world, the restaurant industry, where the margins are razor thin, where the hours are relentless, where the emotional labor is constant and unceasing, where every single day is different and no outcome is guaranteed. That transition is not small. Hold on to it. Now, here's the detail about Mathew Mitchell that I believe is the most analytically significant piece of information in this entire case. Mathew had 0 social media presence. Not a small presence. Not an inactive account somewhere. 0. In a world where nearly every adult documents some version of their interior life online, their opinions, their relationships, their frustrations, their joys, Mathew Mitchell kept his entire inner world entirely offline. Thy had actually joked about this publicly. She wrote that when they first met in 2010, she was genuinely convinced he was either a con artist or a married man living a double life. Because who in 2010 has no social media at all? That is suspicious. That is the kind of thing that makes a reasonable person take a step back and ask questions. But no, he was simply a man who preferred books and newspapers. A man who chose, deliberately and consistently, to keep his interior life entirely his own. And in the context of this investigation, that choice has enormous analytical implications. A man with 0 social media, 0 digital emotional expression, and 0 public record of his psychological state is a man we know almost nothing about from the inside. We know his resume. We know his professional history. We know what Thy chose to share about their relationship and their life together. We know what his colleagues observed from the outside. But Mathew Mitchell's own emotional landscape, his fears, his pressures, his state of mind in those final days, the things he thought about in the quiet hours when no one was watching. We have almost nothing to work with, because he chose, persistently and completely, to keep all of it private. Stanton Bundy, the former head chef of Traveler's Table, the man who competed on and won beat Bobby Flay during his time at the restaurant, and one of the people who knew Mathew in close, sustained professional proximity, told reporters after the tragedy that he had only ever seen Mathew and Thy in a minor disagreement. He called Mathew a great friend, and when he learned what had happened, he said he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew. This is not someone speaking from the periphery. This is a man who worked alongside Mathew for years in the high-pressure, close-quarters environment of a professional kitchen. And he had nothing, no warning, no red flag, no moment he could point to in retrospect and say, "There, that was the sign I missed." Nothing. And then there is the dinner table. On the same Monday evening that Houston police were walking through the front door of the Mitchell home on Kingston Street, Mathew's friends were sitting at a dinner table, waiting for him to arrive. He had plans. A completely ordinary Monday evening dinner with people who cared about him. He never showed up. Before I go any further, I want to tell you about how they fell in love, because the love story matters in this case, more than people have acknowledged, and I think it deserves to be told fully. They met in 2010. Their first unofficial date was at 2 in the morning at a place called House of Pies. Thy ordered a chicken fried steak at 2 in the morning, and Mathew later admitted he quietly judged her for it. He never said so. He just silently judged her and kept showing up anyway. Their first official date was at Backstreet Cafe, but the moment Thy knew, the moment she actually, genuinely, completely knew, was when Mathew showed up to a large Vietnamese family gathering early in their relationship and went completely, enthusiastically, and entirely unself-consciously all in on her favorite Vietnamese food. No hesitation, no performance, no awkwardness about being the outsider in the room. Fully present, fully in. She said that was the moment. They married by the sea in Porto, Portugal. A decade later, they traveled to St. Kitts for their anniversary, and Thy wrote publicly about it, that 10 years later, it still felt like the beginning. And 10 days before she died, on April 24, 2026, Thy posted a video on Instagram, both of them in the frame, laughing, her joking about growing old, him smiling in the background. She wrote, "He thinks we will grow old together. He will, but I am Asian." I didn't have the heart to correct him. Hundreds of people commented, people who knew them, people who had never met them, people who stumbled across it and smiled because two people were laughing together and the world for a moment felt okay. That is the last documented public moment of Thy and Mathew Mitchell, together, laughing. What Thy and Mathew Mitchell built over the course of 6 years is, by any honest measure, genuinely extraordinary. Traveler's Table opened in Houston's Montrose neighborhood in 2019. The concept was built directly from their actual travels. Dishes from Australia, Japan, Korea, Nigeria, Thailand, India, Singapore, all under one roof. The kind of menu that communicates something specific to anyone paying attention. The people who made this have actually been to those places and sat at those tables. This was not a concept developed from research. This was a life translated into food. In 2021, Guy Fieri showed up. Traveler's Table was featured on diners, drive-ins and dives, national exposure on one of the most watched food programs in American television history. That kind of attention changes a restaurant's trajectory entirely. In 2023, head chef Stanton Bundy competed on Beat Bobby Flay and won. In July 2025, Chef Miguel Torres appeared on Guy's Grocery Games. By 2025, Yelp ranked Traveler's Table number 2 on their list of the top places to eat in all of Houston, number 2, in one of the most competitive, most celebrated food cities in the country. They did not stop there. In October 2024, Traveler's Cart opened at 1401 Montrose Boulevard. A fast, casual global street food concept launched after raising $2.35 million in funding. 2 restaurants, a fashion line, a hospitality umbrella called Travelers Collective. In 2025, the Greater Houston chapter of the Texas Restaurant Association named them Restaurateurs of the Year. And in the weeks immediately before May 4, 2026, they were actively developing a new menu for the World Cup. There was excitement in the air around what they were building. There were plans. There was momentum. There was a future that every single person in their orbit could see and feel and touch. Just days before everything ended, Thy hosted the Houston Restaurant Association board meeting at Traveler's Table. 50 restaurateurs showed up. Craig Howard, president of the Houston chapter, described it plainly. Great operation. Wonderful staff. Great food. That was days before the officers arrived on Kingston Street. Monday, May 4th, 2026. The night before, Sunday, May 3rd, multiple friends had spoken to Thy Mitchell by phone. She had sounded completely normal, present, engaged, planning, talking about the week ahead, being entirely, recognizably herself. At some point after those phone calls ended, the Mitchell family went silent. The babysitter began trying to reach them. No response. Monday came. The silence held through the entire day. The babysitter knew this family. She knew their patterns, their rhythms, the way their household moved through time. And she knew, in the way that you know things before you can explain them, before you can give them language or evidence or a concrete reason, that this silence was not normal. This family does not go dark like this. She made the call. Around 5:30 in the evening on Monday, May 4th, 2026, Houston Police Department officers arrived at 2113 Kingston Street, near Avalon Place, in the River Oaks neighborhood of Houston. And I am going to give you what they found plainly and directly, because these are human beings, and they deserve to be named and acknowledged for exactly who they were, not dressed up in dramatic language. Mathew Mitchell, 52 years old, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Thy Mitchell, 39 years old, pregnant, dead from a gunshot wound to the head. Ruled a homicide by the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences. Maya Mitchell, 8 years old, dead from a gunshot wound to the head. Ruled a homicide, found in her bed. Maxwell Mitchell, 4 years old, dead from a gunshot wound to the head. Ruled a homicide, found in his bed. The official time of death for both children, as recorded by the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences, 6:11 in the evening on that Monday. I want you to sit with one detail in particular. Maya and Maxwell were found in their beds. In their beds, the place where a child trusts completely and without reservation that they are safe. The place where every parent tucks their child in at the end of the day, says goodnight, and the child closes their eyes because that is the one place in the world where nothing can reach them. That is where Maya Mitchell, 8 years old, was found. That is where Maxwell Mitchell, 4 years old, was found. Houston police issued an official statement. It read, "Evidence on scene indicated the incident was a murder-suicide in which the male shot the 3 victims and then shot himself. That is the confirmed record. Confirmed by Houston Police. Confirmed by NBC News. Confirmed by the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences. Mathew Mitchell shot his wife and his 2 children before turning the gun on himself. In the 6 months preceding May 4th, 2026, there were 0 prior police calls to that home. 0 legal filings of any kind in Harris County courts. 0 restraining orders. 0 domestic violence reports. 0 documented complaints. Nothing on paper that would have told anyone, anywhere, that something was wrong inside that house. Nothing. The investigation remains active. No motive has been officially released. No note has been confirmed. No explanation has been offered by investigators. And on the same Monday evening that Houston police were standing inside that River Oaks home, Matthew's friends were sitting at a dinner table across the city, waiting for him to arrive. He had plans. He never showed up. If this case is already sitting heavy with you, if you can feel the weight of what is still to come in this story, this is exactly the the kind of coverage Crime Scene Archives is built for. Hit the like button right now to help this video reach more people. And subscribe if you haven't already. Every view and every subscriber tells the algorithm that these lives matter, and that this story deserves to be told carefully and completely. Now let's keep going. This is the section of the video I have been building toward, and I want to approach it the way it deserves, carefully, analytically, and with complete honesty about what the evidence does and does not support. Because the question at the center of this case, why did Mathew Mitchell do what investigators say he did, is a question that Houston police have not officially answered. No motive released, no note confirmed, no statement from investigators that explains what was happening inside that household in the days and hours before May 4th. But that does not mean we cannot examine what the publicly available evidence does and does not support. So I want to put every credible theory on the board, examine each one honestly, and tell you exactly where the evidence takes us and where it runs out. This is the theory that has come up most frequently in public discussion of this case, and I understand exactly why. The financial architecture of the Mitchell's life in 2026 was, by any honest assessment, significant. Traveler's Cart opened in October 2024 after a $2.35 million funding round, and I want to be analytically precise about what that number means. $2.35 million raised is also $2.35 million owed. That is how capital funding works. You raise money, and you are obligated to pay it back. Running restaurants in 2025 and into 2026 has been genuinely brutal across the industry. Rising labor costs, rising food costs, insurance premiums climbing, rent escalating. The restaurant sector has been under enormous pressure nationwide, and Houston is not immune. And the home, a $1.2 million property in River Oaks, one of the most prestigious and expensive neighborhoods in Houston. 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, nearly 4,000 square feet. The mortgage payments on a home of that value are not small numbers, particularly when you are simultaneously servicing a multi-million-dollar business debt, expecting a 3rd child, and operating in an industry where the margin between success and collapse can disappear in a single quarter. So was financial pressure building to a breaking point? Was Mathew Mitchell staring at numbers that felt unsurvivable? Here is what I need you to consider carefully. A restaurant editor who knew the Mitchells closely was direct with reporters after the tragedy. He said there was no indication that those financial pressures played any role in what happened. And here is something that the timeline itself makes difficult to ignore. In February 2026, just 2 months before May 4th, Thy appeared on Houston Matters Radio speaking about the financial challenges facing the restaurant industry with calm composure, measured optimism, and active forward planning. That is not the language or the posture of someone experiencing financial freefall. That is the voice of someone who sees a path and is walking it deliberately. And they were developing a World Cup menu. You do not invest time, energy, and creative resources into planning a World Cup menu if you genuinely believe your business is weeks away from collapse. You do not host a 50-person industry board meeting at your restaurant and receive praise for your operation if everything is falling apart beneath the surface. So what is the honest verdict here? Financial pressure. Context, certainly. Accumulative weight, possibly. The confirmed primary motive? The evidence does not support it. But pressure, even when it is not the trigger, can be one of many weights quietly stacking. That is worth holding. This is the theory I want to spend the most time examining. Because of every possibility on the board, it is the one most consistent with the behavioral evidence, even in the complete absence of any official confirmation. There is no confirmed diagnosis. There is no public record of any mental health treatment. There is no documentation of any kind indicating that Mathew Mitchell was being treated for depression or any other mental health condition. That is true. But here's what I need you to understand analytically. And this is not speculation. This is clinical reality. Depression, particularly severe depression, does not always produce a paper trail. In fact, the most devastating depressive episodes are frequently the ones that leave no record at all, because the person experiencing them is either unaware of the true severity of their condition, or they are actively and deliberately concealing it from the people around them. Mathew Mitchell was a man with zero social media, a man who kept his entire interior life private by consistent, deliberate choice, a man who, by the account of everyone who knew him, gave the people around him nothing externally to grab onto. He is precisely the kind of person whose depression, if it existed, would be completely invisible to everyone in his life. There is a specific pattern that mental health professionals and investigators have identified in cases of family annihilation, which is the clinical term for what investigators say occurred in that River Oaks home. And that pattern frequently involves a perpetrator experiencing a severe, untreated depressive episode, a person who has come to believe, through the catastrophic reality-distorting lens of that illness, that the world is so dangerous, so impossible to navigate, so hostile and unredeemable, that ending the lives of his family is, in his distorted perception, an act of protection rather than destruction. That is not logic. That is not rational thought. That is what severe, untreated depression can do to a human mind when it is left to compound in isolation and silence. Does that describe Mathew Mitchell? I cannot confirm it. We do not have a diagnosis. We do not have a note. We do not have documented treatment history. We have an absence of evidence, which is not the same as evidence of absence. What we do know is this. Nobody around Mathew Mitchell, not Stanton Bundy, who called him a great friend after years of working alongside him, not the friends sitting at the dinner table on Monday evening, not Thy, whose Instagram documented their shared life with warmth and humor as recently as 10 days before the end. Nobody saw anything they could name, point to, or describe as distress. The invisibility was total and complete. And that total invisibility is one of the most consistently documented features of the kind of severe depression that precedes a family annihilation event. The verdict here, the behavioral pattern, is consistent with severe, invisible depression. It is not confirmed, but of every theory on this board, it is the one most supported by what the behavioral evidence actually shows. I want to be very precise about how I frame this, because precision matters enormously here. Multiple outlets reported, through unnamed sources described as close to the case, that in the period before the killings, Mathew Mitchell had been experiencing paranoia. That allegation has not been officially confirmed by Houston police. It has not been addressed publicly by the family. It does not appear in any official record. It must be treated as what it is, an unverified allegation from unnamed sources. But I think it warrants honest analytical examination because, if it is accurate, if Mathew was experiencing clinical paranoia in those final days, it changes the framework for understanding everything else in this case. Clinical paranoia is not sadness. It is not even depression, though the two can and frequently do coexist. Paranoia is a specific and severe perceptual distortion, a belief, held with complete internal conviction, that the world is conspiring against you, that the people around you represent threats, that dangers are imminent and real that no one else can perceive. It is a state in which the person experiencing it is not exaggerating. They are not performing. From the inside, the threat feels completely and urgently real. From the outside, paranoia can look like withdrawal, like quiet intensity, like someone who is thinking a great deal and speaking a little less than usual. Not alarming, not a red flag that would prompt anyone to intervene. Just different, slightly more internal, slightly harder to reach. 0 people who knew Mathew Mitchell have publicly described behavior they would characterize as paranoid. 0, which leaves 2 possibilities. Either the allegation is inaccurate, or the paranoia was so thoroughly internal, so completely self-contained, that it left no visible trace in the external world. And if it was real, if Mathew was experiencing paranoia, what was he paranoid about? Financial collapse? Something private within the marriage? His own physical health? Something in the world around him that we have no knowledge of. The record cannot tell us. And that inability to answer the question is the most honest place the public record currently allows us to stand. Verdict: unverified, cannot be confirmed, cannot be ruled out. But a thread the evidence does not permit us to simply discard. This theory has circulated in online discussions, in comment sections, within the Houston community, and I think it deserves direct examination rather than dismissal, even if the conclusion we reach is limited. The contrast between Mathew and Thy's public presence was stark and undeniable. Thy's Instagram went back years, thousands of followers, hundreds of comments on individual posts. The April 24th laughing video alone generated an enormous response from people who had never met either of them. She was celebrated. She was visible. She was a recognizable and beloved public figure within the Houston hospitality world and beyond. Mathew had zero social media. His entire public presence, what the world knew about him, his personality, his warmth, his humor, his love story, existed only because Thy chose to share it. She was the author of his public image by default, because he had none of his own. Was there friction in that dynamic? Was a man who had spent his entire adult life deliberately keeping his interior world private uncomfortable with the visibility and attention that surrounded his wife and their shared business? Did that contrast create tension in the household that the people around them could not see? The honest answer is that the public record cannot tell us. There is no documented argument about social media, no reported tension between them over Thy's Instagram presence, no account from any friend, colleague, or close contact describing a conversation where Mathew expressed discomfort or resentment toward her public life. What exists is a contrast, a real, undeniable, significant contrast between two people who related to public life in completely opposite ways. Whether that contrast was a source of pain is a question the evidence does not currently answer. Verdict: speculation only. No direct supporting evidence in the public record. The contrast is real and worth naming honestly. It cannot be confirmed as a contributing factor. This is the theory I think has been most underexamined in the coverage of this case, and I want to give it the time it deserves. Picture the full weight of Mathew Mitchell's life in May 2026. A $1.2 million home in River Oaks, 2 active restaurants, a women's fashion brand, $2.35 million in business debt, being actively serviced, a pregnant wife, expecting their 3rd child, 2 young children at home, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, a sister-in-law's wedding in Boston to plan around, a World Cup menu in development, a board meeting to host, a community that celebrated him and Thy as one of its most visible and admired power couples. That is an enormous amount for any human being to carry, for anyone. But now consider who Mathew Mitchell was before all of that existed. A man who spent 14 years in the controlled, structured, institutional world of pharmaceutical research, a world governed by process, by documentation, by data, a world where outcomes are measured, where decisions are made on evidence, where the environment itself imposes order on the chaos of human variables, a world that is fundamentally different, psychologically, emotionally, operationally, from the restaurant industry, because the restaurant industry is not controlled. The restaurant industry is beautiful, creative, community building, and relentless. Every service is different. Every day is different. The financial pressure never fully recedes. The emotional labor is constant. There is no controlled process. There is no predictable outcome. You make your best decisions, and then the variables you cannot control, the weather, the supply chain, the staffing, the shift in consumer sentiment, make their own decisions around you. Was Mathew Mitchell, a man who had built 14 years of professional identity around institutional structure and control, struggling beneath the surface of the life he and Thy had created, not visibly. From the outside, he appeared to be a full, active, engaged partner in everything they were building. He showed up. He named the cocktails. He was present at every event. He appeared invested and committed. But from the inside, we do not know, because Mathew Mitchell kept his inside entirely to himself. And here is the dimension of this that I think deserves specific attention. The career transition from pharmaceutical CEO to restaurateur is not only a professional change, it is an identity change. It is a fundamental and total rearrangement of who you are in the world, how you are perceived, what your days look like, what success means in practical terms, what failure looks like, and how quickly it arrives. For some people, that kind of transformation is liberating and exhilarating. For others, it is quietly and invisibly destabilizing, even when everything on the surface looks like it is working. Was Matthew one of the latter? The record will not tell us. But the question is legitimate, it is underexplored, and it is worth asking directly. Verdict: speculative, not supported by direct evidence. But the combination of the career pivot and the personality profile raises questions that have not been sufficiently examined in the public conversation around this case. And then there's the final possibility, the most uncomfortable one. And it is this: that there is a reason, a specific and concrete reason, that nobody outside of that home on Kingston Street had any knowledge of, something that has not yet surfaced in the investigation, something that investigators are actively working through that has not been made public. Could there be a financial reality, a hidden debt, a hidden loss, an investment catastrophically gone wrong that exists entirely outside any public record? Could there be a medical diagnosis, something Matthew alone knew, a terminal illness, a neurological condition, something that was quietly altering his perception of reality in ways that left no trace visible to anyone around him? Could there be something within the marriage itself, something private, something painful, something that the people around them had genuinely no knowledge of, that was building pressure inside that household without ever surfacing in the external world? And there is one more possibility worth naming directly: the sudden, devastating loss of Thy's brother-in-law in February 2026. Could that loss, arriving into a household that was already navigating the full weight of everything else, have introduced a stressor that nobody outside of that family was aware of? Grief shared within a household is not always visible from outside its walls. The honest answer to all of these questions is I do not know. The public record does not tell us. The investigation is still active, and it is genuinely possible, not dramatic speculation, but genuine possibility, that when the full picture eventually emerges, it will include something that no one currently discussing this story has thought to examine. Verdict: the record is incomplete. The investigation is ongoing. The honest position is that we do not yet have the full picture, and we may be waiting a significant amount of time before we do. 1 week after the Mitchell family was found, on Monday, May 11, 2026, Traveler's Cart on Montrose Boulevard opened its doors for a community vigil. The gathering ran from 2 in the afternoon to 6 in the evening, open to restaurant supporters, longtime guests, past and present staff, and anyone who wished to come and be present in their grief. The Houston Chronicle was there. What reporters documented was this: photos of Thy and her children placed on a table near the entrance, flowers, candles lit in the parking lot outside, people moving quietly through the space, talking softly, holding one another. No speeches, no formal program, just a place to gather and grieve. Houston chef Nikki Tran was there, photographed embracing Ryan Brown, the director of operations for Traveler's Cart and Traveler's Table, the man who has been holding the business together in the days since the tragedy. Tran shared the memory of the Saigon sunrise, the broken rice dish Thy had mentioned missing, the dish Tran was saving for her, the dish she will never get to make for her again. Amber Farrell Steele, founder of Timeless Spirits and Drinks, shared her memory of the gift card swaps, Thy organizing women business owners to exchange gift cards that they would then pass on to their employees for the holidays. Small, practical, thoughtful, completely consistent with who every single person who knew her said she was. Allie Jarrett stood in the space and said simply, she was always thinking about other people. There are just no words. Angelique Gildas said, she had this incredible way of elevating everyone around her without being pushy in any way. You just found yourself doing your best. But online, the community response was more complicated. The vigil announcement honored the Mitchell family, which included Matthew's name alongside Thy's and the children's. Some people felt that was wrong, that a man who investigators say shot his wife and 2 children, one of them an unborn child she was carrying, does not belong in the same memorial space as his victims. That naming him alongside them is a form of erasure of what he did to them. Others pushed back, arguing that Matthew's colleagues, his close friends, the people who worked alongside him for years and called him a great friend, those people are also grieving. That their grief, however complicated, is real. That grief is not a simple thing, and does not always fit a clean moral framework. That debate, who gets to be mourned, how, and by whom, is itself part of the story of this case, and I do not think there is an easy resolution to it. What I do think is this: the vigil, the candles, the gift card stories, the Saigon sunrise that will never be cooked, all of it is evidence of the same fundamental reality. Community that loved Thy Mitchell deeply, completely, and without reservation. A community that cannot reconcile the man they knew, the man who named the cocktails and went all in at the Vietnamese family gathering, and was described as a great friend right up until the final days, with the man that investigators say walked through that home. That inability to reconcile is not a failure of understanding. It is the honest response to something that does not resolve cleanly into any framework we have for making sense of the world. I want to be precise and clear about the current official status of this case, because in a story this widely discussed and this emotionally charged, clarity about what is confirmed and what is not confirmed is not optional. It is a responsibility. What is officially confirmed, sourced directly from HPD statements and Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences records, Houston police are handling this as a murder-suicide. Mathew Mitchell has been named as the suspect. He is deceased. No criminal charges will be filed because there is no living suspect to charge. The medical examiner has confirmed all 4 cause-of-death rulings. Maya Mitchell and Maxwell Mitchell were found in their beds. The investigation remains active. Anyone with information is asked to contact HPD's Homicide Division. What has been widely reported by multiple sourced outlets, but has not been officially confirmed by Houston police, that Thy Mitchell was pregnant at the time of her death. What remains unverified, sourced only through unnamed individuals described as close to the case, the allegation that Mathew had been experiencing paranoia in the period before the killings. Houston police have not addressed it. The family has not addressed it publicly. It does not appear in any official record. No motive has been officially released. No note has been confirmed. No explanation has been offered by investigators. And the honest answer to the most fundamental question in this case, why did Mathew Mitchell do what investigators say he did, is that we do not know, not officially, not completely, not yet. That question may eventually be answered as the investigation continues. It may be answered partially, with some details emerging, but others remaining sealed. Or it may remain one of those cases where the complete picture never fully becomes public. We will see where it goes. But the not knowing does not mean we stop treating these lives with the full weight they deserve. I want to step back for a moment, because I think this case carries lessons that extend beyond the Mitchell family, specifically things that matter for the way we understand safety, crisis, and the people closest to us. The first thing this case tells us is that the absence of documentation is not the same as safety. 0 prior police calls to 2113 Kingston Street in the 6 months before May 4th. 0 legal filings in Harris County courts. 0 documented warning signs of any kind. 0. And 4 people dead on a Monday evening in one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in Houston. We have built systems, legal systems, social systems, community systems, that treat documentation as evidence of reality. If it was not written down, it did not happen. If it was not reported, it was not serious. The Mitchell case is a direct and devastating challenge to that framework. The most dangerous situations are frequently the ones that leave no paper trail at all. The second thing this case tells us is that the most dangerous crises are the most invisible ones. Whatever Mathew Mitchell was carrying in those final days, whatever had been building to a catastrophic and irreversible breaking point, it was entirely invisible to everyone around him. His closest professional colleague called him a great friend. His dinner companions were expecting him at the table. His wife was posting laughing videos with him 10 days before the end. The invisibility was not partial, it was complete. And that is not a failure of the people who loved this family. That is the nature of invisible crisis. It does not announce itself. It does not hand you a warning. It builds in silence, in the space between one conversation and the next, behind a closed door, in the quiet hours that no one else witnesses. The third thing this case tells us is about the babysitter. She did not have a specific, articulable reason to call. She could not point to a prior incident. She could not cite a stated threat. She could not produce documentation. She had familiarity, the knowledge built through sustained, close experience with this family, that their silence was not normal, that something was wrong, and she acted on it. That call did not save them. The tragedy had already occurred by the time officers arrived, but it ended the not knowing. It gave the people who loved Thy and Maya and Maxwell the information they needed, even though it was the worst information possible. And it is a clear, direct reminder that when something does not feel right, when the silence stretches too long, when the pattern breaks, when the gut says something is wrong, that instinct is worth acting on every single time, without waiting for documentation, without waiting for an official threshold to be crossed. When something is wrong, you call. I want to end this video, not with the investigation, not with the theories, not with the unanswered questions that may or may not ever be answered. I want to end with who they were, because that is what matters most. Thy Mitchell was 39 years old, born in Chicago, raised in Houston. Her father worked at NASA. Her mother and grandmother ran a Vietnamese restaurant where she spent her childhood weekends, not as a guest, but as a worker, learning, watching, absorbing the lesson that would define her entire adult life. That feeding people is not a transaction. That hospitality is not a business strategy. That you put food in front of a stranger and make them feel like family. And that matters more than anything else in the room. She earned degrees from the University of Houston and Penn State. She held leadership roles at Fortune 500 companies. She opened 2 restaurants. She launched a fashion brand. She served on a board. She organized gift card swaps so other women business owners could take care of their employees during the holidays. She promoted other people's restaurants on her own social media because she genuinely wanted them to succeed. She offered a fellow chef a completely open stage at her own venue. No restrictions, because she believed in her talent and wanted to give it room. She held her grieving sister together through the sudden loss of a husband, while carrying her own 3rd child, while running 2 businesses, while planning a trip to Boston for a wedding, while shopping with her 8-year-old daughter for the perfect dress. She did cartwheels in the street when Traveler's Cart finished construction. She appeared on local radio 2 months before she died and said the words that are now the most honest description of her life's entire philosophy. We want someone to feel like they are getting away when they are leaving their home versus a utility meal. Thy Mitchell spent her whole life helping people get away, helping them feel transported, helping them feel celebrated, helping them feel like the world had more in it than they remembered when they walked in the door. She was a woman who believed in the transforming power of a meal, of a table, of a room where someone took the time to make you feel like the evening was made for you. And she was carrying a 3rd child when she died. Maya Mitchell was 8 years old. She attended River Oaks Elementary School. She spent the last Sunday of her life trying on dresses in a room full of mirrors next to her mother. She made sure her mom found something she loved too. She was 8 years old, and she was already thinking about the people around her. She was already, in the smallest and most genuine way, her mother's daughter. She was found in her bed. Maxwell Mitchell was 4 years old. He had his whole life in front of him, in a way that 4 years old simply does not allow you to comprehend until you are standing on the other side of a tragedy like this one. He was found in his bed. Mathew Mitchell was 52 years old. Oxford, London, Paris, pharmaceutical CEO, culinary school, the man who named every cocktail on the menu, the man who went completely all in at the Vietnamese family gathering without a moment of hesitation, and by doing so, became the man Thy Mitchell knew she was going to spend her life with, the man whose closest colleague called him a great friend right up until the final days, the man whose wife wrote about him with humor and love and warmth 10 days before the end. One of the people who knew them said something after the tragedy that I have not been able to move past. They said, love was there, and still, it was not enough. That sentence is the heaviest thing in this entire story, because the love was real. The laughter in that April video was real. The cartwheels in the street were real. The gift card swaps and the Saigon sunrise and the dress shopping on a Sunday afternoon, all of it was real. The restaurants are still open. The staff is still showing up every day to a place that Thy Mitchell built with everything she had. The candles from the vigil have burned down, but the memory of the people who held them has not. Traveler's legacy is being honored every single day by the people this couple poured themselves into for years. And somewhere in Houston, Nikki Tran is still thinking about the Saigon sunrise. That is who Thy Mitchell was. Her peers called her a ray of light. And the remarkable thing about a ray of light, the thing that makes it endure, is that it does not disappear when the source goes out. It keeps going. It keeps traveling. It reaches places the source never knew it would reach. Rest in peace, Thy Mitchell. Rest in peace, Maya. Rest in peace, Maxwell. And may the traveler's legacy live on in every meal served, every staff member lifted, every table where someone sits down and feels, just for an evening, like they have gotten away. Before we close, I want to be very direct with you. If you or someone you know is struggling right now, if the weight of something feels too heavy to carry alone, please reach out. Call or text 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It is free, it is confidential, and it is available 24 hours a day. If you are in a relationship where you feel unsafe or threatened, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available at 1-8007-997233. These resources exist because invisible crises are real, and because asking for help is not weakness. It is the one decision that changes everything. That is everything we have on this case today. The investigation remains active. No official motive has been released, and the question of why remains, for now, unanswered. If this story moved you, if you believe that cases like this one deserve to be told with care and with the full weight of the lives involved, then subscribe to Crime Scene Archives right now and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Every view, every subscriber, every share is a vote for coverage that takes these lives seriously and refuses to reduce them to headlines. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This community reads everything, and your perspective matters in how we continue to cover stories like this one. Stay safe, stay present, and never underestimate what someone might be carrying in silence.